Shipp arrives in the Jacquelyn Gator parking lot, he hears nothing extraordinary. He sees nothing extraordinary. He takes a couple steps towards the building, and piercing the air is a statement, "I'm going to fucking kill you." Officer Shipp immediately looks in the direction of those statements, and he sees some legs laying out between a car and a deck. What you'll hear is there's a 3-foot, 1-inch space. He sees those legs, and that's exactly where he heard those statements. He immediately starts walking over there, and pow! He hears the gunshot go off. He draws his weapon. He knows he hasn't been seen. He goes around that car. He grabs the man on top. He pulls him off. He puts him against the fence. Ladies and gentlemen, that man on top, Christopher Freeze. He's laying on top of Paul Cruikshank, who's laying on his right side, fetal position, not moving, blood pouring out of his head. There's a firearm laying right next to him. When Officer Shipp walks up, he says, drop the firearm, drop the gun. And Officer Shipp will tell you the firearm was under where Christopher Freeze's hands came up. You see, this case really starts at Haley's and Benito's. It's a place over in Volano Beach. And at that point, there's no evidence that the two, Mr. Cruikshank and Mr. Freeze, arrived together. What the evidence will show is that they left together, that they got into a taxi cab from Volano Beach. And on the way from Volano Beach, the taxi stopped and he picked up another fare, a couple. And that was Michael and Celeste Sullivan. Michael and Celeste Sullivan got in the front seat. Christopher Freeze and Paul Cruikshank were in the back seat. The taxi cab picked the Sullivans up last. They were engaged at the time. They are now married. And dropped them off first. They went to the winery. They were going to listen to a band that they were anticipating having at their wedding. So they were dropped off there, and then the two, Christopher Freeze and Paul Cruikshank, continued on to the Giggling Gator, just a couple blocks away. There, the evidence will show that they went inside and they ordered a beer. They weren't there long. The evidence will show that they left outside together. And next, we know from Daniel Garrett, who is a Little Champ employee, Kangaroo Little Champ. See, the Kangaroo Little Champ is right next to the Giggling Gator. There's a cut through in the fence between the two businesses, and Daniel Garrett was working that night. It was coming close to the end of his shift. It was just about 8:30 or so, and so he took out the garbage. He came outside, and he'll tell you that on his way to the dumpster, he heard two men arguing in the Giggling Gator parking lot. He didn't think anything of it, nothing physical, just argument. He throws away the trash and he turns to walk back into the establishment, his establishment, the Kangaroo. At that time, he'll tell you that he heard the click of a firearm and it drew his attention over as he sees Christopher Freeze pulling that weapon from his right side and puts it right under Paul Cruikshank's chin. Mr. Garrett will tell you immediately Paul Cruikshank's hands went up and he was backing up, and Christopher Freeze was pushing him back to that gate, to that deck, saying, "I'm going to kill you." The whole time, Daniel Garrett will tell you that Paul Cruikshank's hands were in the air. Daniel Garrett immediately goes inside. He calls 911. He says, get here," and you'll hear the 911 tape. Officer Shipp arrives. A minute 23 seconds after that, after he's dispatched. It's about 2 minutes after the 911 call. They're about a little more, a little less. We'll have the times for you. He parks in that Little Champ parking lot, cuts right through that cut through that I just told you about, and there he finds himself in the Giggling Gator parking lot. All's quiet at that time. The evidence will show that area where Officer Shipp saw those legs laying between the car and the deck. That's the deck that Daniel Garrett saw Paul Cruikshank up against. Officer Shipp then, as I told you, heard those statements. He goes over there. He pulls Christopher Freeze off. Sergeant Frasca is seconds behind Officer Shipp. He parks in the same parking lot in the Little Champ, which is just to the west of the Little Champ. I'm sorry, just to the west of the Gable and Gator. He parks in the same area. He gets out of his car and he comes around King Street, where Officer Shipp cuts through, Sergeant Nebraska. He goes around King Street to come in. And he also hears the shot. And as he looks, he sees Officer Shipp putting Christopher Freeze up against that gate. He comes over to help secure Christopher Freeze. Both of them heard Christopher Freeze at that point say, "He shot me." The evidence will show there was only one bullet shot. It was the one that went straight through Paul Cruikshank's head. Once they have Christopher Freeze secured, they place him in the back seat of Officer Linsky's vehicle. They process the scene, and in the area where Paul Cruikshank's body was, first evac comes, fire rescue, they come, and Paul Cruikshank's still showing signs of brain activity. So they attempt to load Paul Cruikshank up to take him to the hospital, but it's a very tight space, remember 3 feet 1 inch. So they have to actually lift him and pull him out a little bit where they place him down so they can put him on the backboard, and then they drag him, or they carry him to the ambulance rescue so they can transport him to the hospital. He's transported to the hospital and he's pronounced dead. At the scene, they're processing the scene. Sean Volmar from the sheriff's office, he comes out to assist in processing. He's a crime scene analyst. And he finds a projectile in the area right under Paul Cruikshank's head. He wasn't able to find it right away because it was obscured by blood. But other than blood, nothing is disturbed in this area. There's potted plants undisturbed. There's regular orange cones undisturbed. They're 3 feet from a car. No damage to the car. The only area of any evidence of anything going on was the pool of blood that's out there. They found the projectile right there. You'll see photographs of where they found the projectile, and you'll also see the projectile. The gun was taken and it was tested, and that gun is the gun that fired the shot through Paul Cruikshank's head. Now, what you'll hear is that when Officer Shipp arrived, Christopher Freeze was on his knees over Paul Cruikshank. The the trajectory, the path of travel, went behind Paul Cruikshank's left ear, which was the one facing up. It was a contact wound placed against his head when that fateful shot was fired. It went straight through, traveled straight, and came out the right side, which was on the ground, just in front of the right ear. That's exactly where the bullet was found. At the end of the evidence, ladies and gentlemen, the state will show that Paul Cruikshank is dead. The evidence will show that he died as a result of the criminal act of Christopher Freeze, and the evidence will show that Christopher Freeze acted with premeditation. And because that's what the evidence is going to show, we're going to ask you, at the conclusion of the evidence, to come back with a verdict of guilty, as charged, first-degree murder with a firearm against Christopher Freeze.